Thanks for tuning in to Written on the Edge, Season 7, Episode 25. I'm Ben Sebastian here with my co-host, S.A. Baz Collins.
Hello, he says on his Pride mic.
And we're really glad you're here with us. On today's show, Sven Davisson from Rebel Satori Press joins us to discuss new novels and their many imprints. We'll follow that with our review of Queer as Folk, the new one on Peacock, and then Baz and I will share what's held our attention this week. So if you like what we're doing, support us on Patreon or hit our merch store. But now, on to Sven. Rebel Satori is celebrating their 20th year in publishing, though it actually started with a zine back in 1989. In addition to the main press, Rebel has 3 imprints: Queer Mojo, Queer Space, edited by Joseph Campbell, and Arabi Manor. Did I pronounce that right? Arabi Manor. They recently announced their 4th imprint, the Library of Homosexual Congress, curated by Tom Cardamone, that will focus on bringing out-of-print queer books back to print before they are lost to history. The first LOHC title will appear this fall. Sven Davisson is a writer, photographer, and editor based in New Orleans. He's the owner and publisher of Rebel Satori. Sven, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Our pleasure. So what started you on this whole journey of lifelong creation?
You sort of referenced it in your intro. Started doing zines back when I was in college. That would be 1989 to age me up a little bit. But I was a freshman, so... Put that in perspective. And then in 2002, we launched online or print journal, and then a transition to an online journal. And then in 2007, we decided we had enough full-length book projects that our writers are working on to launch a book press. And then various imprints grew out of that.
Nice. So let's talk about Rebel Satori. What is the core focus?
Originally started the core focus was on experimental spirituality, which was what the journal was. And most of our authors end up being queer, but writing non-queer stuff in the spiritual domain, because there wasn't a lot of outlets in the early 2000s for people thinking about spirituality or expressing spirituality, but from a queer perspective. And then the press originally grew out of that. And then in 2008, I was sitting in an airport, and one of our models and my mentor was Greg Wharton, who ran Suspect Thoughts Press, which was probably the most cutting edge press back in that time period. And they had some financial difficulties. And in 2008, they decided to cease publishing. So I'm sitting in an airport, and my phone rings, and it's Greg saying, we have some commitments. Can you pick these up? And then immediately after I got on the phone with him, my phone blew up with writers that we mutually knew that they were publishing or had published. And they all wanted me to pick up their books. So Queer Mojo was launched as sort of a lifeboat for all these queer authors who were suddenly, shoved off a boat that was no longer going forward. I won't say sinking, but...
Right. Understood.
Okay.
So the focus for Queer Mojo is general queer literature, or is there something more specific?
It's queer literature, fiction, nonfiction, and poetry. Tends to veer toward things that are on the cutting edge that might not be picked up by their presses. So one of my presses that I've always liked was City Lights books, doing the beatniks back in the 50s and 60s. Lawrence Ferlinghetti and was an idol. Allen Ginsberg and William Burroughs are obviously personal interests. So that was always sort of my model of publishing books, not with a concern for if they sell, but because they're great things that need to be out there and voices that need to be heard or read in that context. So it tends to be a little bit more on the cutting edge. I mean, the first full-length book we published was My Hero, which was a finalist for Project Queer Lit. So we were also involved with Project Queer Lit, which was sort of Project Runway, but for gay books.
That's cool.
Which Greg Morton was also running that. So we partnered for the last year or two of that. And My Hero was actually it's a post-apocalyptic novel with the lead character has an oracular penis that talks to him. So that sort of sets the tone for what the book was.
Nice. Yeah, I can't understand why a major 5 wouldn't pick that up,
Yeah,
it got trashed in some feminist blogs. Actually, it was very well written and very creative. And then, of course, the trashing was people who'd never read it. They just thought the concept.
Right, of course, yeah. Drive-bys.
Right.
I mean, I guess it is a little male-centric, but
Well,
I'd read a book if it was a talking vagina, and there were the vagina monologue, right? So
well, exactly.
it's not totally out of context.
Right. Exactly.
So what differentiates Queer Mojo from Queer Space?
So Queer Mojo. Queer Mojo always did a little bit of speculative fiction, but it wasn't a focus. And in 2018, 2019, somewhere in there, Joseph Campbell, who publishes under the name Jay Warren, I think you've had him on your podcast
Times.
last year sometime for
Yep.
Tiger. He approached me with the concept of doing a speculative fiction, science fiction, fantasy, horror imprint, and volunteered to edit it, be the acquisition editor, and deal with the authors, which is one of the things that takes a lot of time is actually dealing with the author side of it. So I do all the acquisitions historically, the design work, the pre-press, promotions, everything. It's a one-person shop. So when he volunteered, we agreed to experiment with it a little bit. And he's been a very aggressive acquisition editor. And last year, he pushed us to 24 books across the entire press. A good chunk of those were Queer Space. This year, we're going to top 25 books per year, I think. And previously, when it was just me, it was, maybe 5 books a year.
Right. That's impressive.
Yeah.
So your most recent imprint, the Library of Homosexual Congress.
The Library of Homosexual Congress, sort of working on the same editorial curatorial model. Tom Cardamone, who I've known for years, approached. So we worked on a book, Fever Spores, which I think we'll get to a bit. And during those conversations, he had written 10 years ago, The Lost Library, which are essays, a collection of essays about books that were formative to queer writers, but are, have been historically lost to time. And I broached the subject of, you have all these lists of books which are out of print in your head. Let's get together and work to put some of those books out. And he loved the idea. And he came up with the Library of Homosexual Congress, which is a great double entendre there.
Yep.
But also, he's very concerned with keeping books or bringing books to the canon, which, the LGBT canon of literature is ever evolving.
Right. How do you acquire rights for a book that's far out of print?
There's 2 ways. Either you track down the author and talk to them directly, or unfortunately, given the time period we're talking about, you figure out who owns the rights, who controls their literary estate.
Gotcha. All right. Just curious.
And we're working with, both types of contract right now.
Right. Are you doing any, not reworking of the text necessarily, obviously, but redesign for printing some of those, or are you just doing them as they were?
So since we're in print in sort of a modern copyright era, in respect to the original presses, we'll do a new layout if the author is still alive and wants to do any edits. We'll do an updated version. Some of the works we're working on will have a new introduction. Usually the person who controls the estate quite often is a literary friend of the original author. So, the new collections hopefully will have, new introductions or forwards by someone to set the book in context.
Nice. All right. Anything you want to mention about either any of the imprints or Rebel Satori as an umbrella?
Well, there's 2. We actually have another imprint, Arabi Manor, which is...
Oh, right. I'm so sorry.
Yeah, that's all right. Which primarily focuses historically. So we started last year. Arabi is actually the town in New Orleans where we live. It's a suburb just outside of New Orleans. I think New Orleans is about a quarter of a mile to the side of me here.
Okay.
And Arabi Manor focuses on reprints of classic folklore, a lot of things that are in public domain, but really nice new additions. And we've got 2 original content books, new material coming out, which will be in the folklore, occult, witchcraft domain, but still generally with queer authors. So it's not a rule, that just happens to be who's in my circle usually.
Okay. And you are specifically focusing on public domain works for that one, or could an author submit something?
2 of the books we have under contract are new books. That one's written and we're doing the design collaboration right now, and then the other is being written, and I'm sending him feedback on a weekly basis.
Nice. Very nice. All right. So now to my question, is there anything you want, and let's separate it. Is there anything you want readers to know?
I mean, my move for building a press, or my ethos, has always been selecting or having a curatorial eye where people know what to expect.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when we're talking about City Lights or even Suspect Thoughts, you know, when I was growing up and reading a lot, the press meant a lot. So if someone was published by a certain press, I knew I'd probably like the book, like their other work. Curatorial eye unlike the big presses where, you know, you have so many editors and you don't know, they don't have that single eye, that single curatorial focus. So it's always the craft of press where people would know what to expect. And that's one of the reasons we sort of hive off imprints, is to, you know, when something grows big enough, you have a separate imprint which has that cure and the entire process.
Sure. And it just helps with discovery, if nothing else.
But I've been doing it for 20 years in this incarnation. So, you know, there's some payback, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Well, plus you're also you're NOLA centric, so it's like Saints and Sinners is right there.
Right, and that was Saints and Sinners was what brought me to New Orleans for the first trip in 2006, right after Katrina.
Nice.
And Paul Willis, who runs it, is a good friend. You know, I'm on the advisory board for Saints and Sinners and have been a sponsor for years.
Very nice.
So I think their dates are up for next March, so definitely check them out.
Nice. And you're preserving queer literature, which is huge.
Yes, huge. Especially because our community's under threat. Yet again, we're hearing the same old arguments from politicians of, it's like the 60s. We roll back to the 60s. We're now groomers and, you know, all that nonsense that people are saying. So it's even more important for platforms like yours and ours to keep the torch going, keep the fire lit. So, you know, queer people have a place that they know is a safe space for them to be heard, you know?
Right.
And there's so many, you know, there are some books from that period, because my high school, if I didn't have it was at Oscar Wilde Memorial Bookshop and Lambda Rising in DC, if I didn't have their catalogs when I was a teenager and, you know, read probably a book a day at that point because school was boring. If I didn't have that outlet,
You're like me.
would have been an entirely different queer person. And that books were my savior at that time. And so many of those independent books have been long out of print. You know, Andrew Holleran will always be in print, but you know, what about the other folks who are publishing at the time, really at the cutting edge? And we've done a little bit of that. I mean, we've partnered with Emmanuel Xavier to do an updated version of Christ-like, and you know, he likes to do anniversary editions. So every time another significant anniversary comes around, or Pure Queen, which was his self-published first book, which he had a lot of attention for back in the day. You know, we keep that in print. And now, you know, we're his sole publisher. We publish everything he's doing. We just talked about a new book for next year. So there's a teaser which hasn't been announced yet.
That's awesome.
Breaking news.
Well, with all of that in mind, let's talk about Fever Spores.
Which is right here.
Right there. Yep.
Yeah. So, you know, my first zine we talked about was Mechtaub, which is actually a term that comes from the collaborative work of Brian Geisen and William Burroughs.
Oh.
I went to a hippie college, and which has a senior thesis as a proto-doctoral thesis as his final project, and mine's on William Burroughs and queer mythology.
Nice.
So Burroughs has always been a fascination for me. So when Brian Alessandro and Tom Cardamone approached me last year about, you know, Burroughs is very much part of the literary canon, very much part of pop culture. I mean, Nike ads and most of the grunge bands cite him, and you know, even back in the 70s with Psychic TV and Jennifer's George and everyone, you know, he's a known commodity, but he's not in the queer canon. He's not, you know, even though he wrote a book called Queer and was writing LGBT content, you know, back in the 50s, even though Queer wasn't published until the 80s, I guess, but certainly Naked Lunch and Wild Boys in the early 70s, Port of Saints, and then his final trilogy, the Red Knights trilogy, all have tons of LGBT characters, or at least male ones. Lesbians don't get as much of a good take on his, but women don't in general in his books. So.
Right.
So they approached me. Oh, go ahead.
No, please continue.
Well, they approached me about you know, having a book which focuses on centering him back into the LGBT canon. So I kind of ironically call it in my head a queering of William S. Burroughs.
There you go.
They call it a reclamation, but
fair.
Whatever works.
Kind of both.
Mm-hmm.
So how did you frame the novel? Obviously, it's not fiction.
No, it's a collection of interviews and essays. Brian Alessandro is a superb interviewer, and that's what he sort of does as one of his day jobs, I think. And has, a superb collection of original interviews, which he and Tom both did. And, it has interviews with Tony Kushner, Fran Lebowitz, David Cronenberg, who directed Naked Lunch, Debbie Harry and Chris Stein from Blondie. It's all the folks who sort of were in Burroughs' circle or were in New York at that time, and we would run into him, or knew his place sort of in the New York zone, or even after he moved to Lawrence. Debbie Harry used to visit them in Lawrence, Kansas all the time. And then it's also a collection of original essays, or mostly original essays, of writers reflecting on the role of William Burroughs' books in their lives. So Chris Kelso, Edmund White, Charlie Vasquez, Peter Dubé, Jerry Wheeler, who I think you've also had on.
Yep, a couple times.
Yes.
And funny thing was, I had no hand in the editorial side of it, in the selection of the material. And when the manuscript came to me, a good chunk of the original essays are by Rebel authors that I've been working with for years.
That's awesome.
It was a good sort of circle there,
Yeah.
Yeah, Trevor Healy's in it as well. We published a couple of his books.
Nice. Is it organized chronologically or kind of by subject matter?
I think lightly thematically.
Okay.
Certainly not chronologically, because a lot of people fit at different periods of his life. And then I actually am included in it as well, so I had to actually make time to write, which I don't have much time to do anymore. So I wasn't not going to be in that table of contents.
Right.
And it's also my wheelhouse, so I had to write something.
I was going to say, it should have called to you.
Yeah.
All right. And it's out now, right? It just came out?
Yeah, it came out on the 14th.
Nice.
Excellent.
And folks can buy it everywhere. Yep.
Just in time for Pride.
Yeah. Mid-Pride month. And yeah, it's available anywhere. It's on our site, on Amazon, all the normal big places. And if you do just Fever Spores Burroughs, I was told by one of my consultants, has great SEO. It shows up first when you do.
That's awesome.
Excellent.
So a great title selection that they did.
Perfect. All right. So what's coming up? Do you have any upcoming late summer, early fall releases for Rebel Satori you want to announce? Or did you want to tease a little bit more about that project that you're working on?
We have a lot of books coming out this summer. So we have a couple of Queer Space titles. The Lever releases later this month. Devil's Due by J.P. Jackson is in July. Truckin' to Please, I think is the full title, by Jerry Rabushka, who we've published before, comes out in August. And then a whole slate of books coming out in the fall. Owen T. Scott Alexander Hess novel reprints. We published two new novellas last year, so bringing two of his previously published books back into print in August.
Very nice. And are there going to be any online appearances? Are you going to be at any conventions?
The big appearance I'm coming up, I'll be in New York with a whole bunch of people for the book launch for Fever Spores.
Nice. When is that?
June 23rd. And 23 is a particularly important number in Burroughs writing, like 23 Skidoo. He had a whole conspiracy theory around 23. So June 23rd, 7 p.m. at the Bureau of General Services Queer Division, which is in Chelsea, I think.
Okay.
But we have all the information on our website and on their website and everything. And I think that's also live streamed. I know they've live streamed the last event we did there. So
where can people go to watch that if they're not in New York?
It's on the Bureau's Facebook page. I think they stream both on Facebook Live and YouTube.
Nice. Well, which social is best to follow, either you or the press?
Facebook or Instagram is where we're most active.
Okay. And we'll have those links on the show page for this episode.
And keeping with the theme of this episode, have you watched the new Queer as Folk set in NOLA?
No, not yet.
I wanted to get your feedback on it and see what you thought. Well, get back to us.
It's funny though, when they were filming, they did the extras call.
Uh,
So we thought about doing that.
did you?
No, but I'm not sure. Some of my authors shared it, so I'm not sure if Daniel Lee, who shared it with me, actually ended up doing it or not.
That would have been cool.
That would have been very cool, yeah.
Yeah, but it's a great sign of the filming industry because, we're Hollywood South some years, depends on tax credits and how Atlanta's doing. But the film industry here is going really well. So that's a positive sign. Post-COVID and now post-Ida and whatever comes this year.
Excellent.
Since we're in hurricane season again.
Yeah, I know.
Oh, and the Arabi tornado was just 2 blocks from here a few months ago. So.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I took out one of our friends' houses.
Oof.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I live on the north end of Tornado Alley, so I'm up in Wisconsin, and we just 2 nights ago had our own tornadoes. So
scary shit.
Oy.
Mm-hmm. Any final words of wisdom for folks?
Write and read. I mean, support our queer authors. Read a book.
Beautiful.
It can even be a book by the Big Five, but
just do something.
Ocean Vuong's novel,
especially in Pride.
Mm-hmm. But yes, everyone, use your dollars to send a message to all publishers that we want more queer content, please.
And if it's indie press, buy it from the press, not from Amazon.
Absolutely.
Please. 100%. All right, folks, we'd like to extend a huge thank you to Sven Davisson for being with us. Sven, thank you so much.
No, thank you for having me.
Our pleasure. All right, we at Written on the Edge are proud to introduce you to new media by queer content creators. So if you enjoy learning about these artists, please like and subscribe so you get the alerts for new episodes. If you want to hear this full interview, check out our Patreon.
Welcome back to our review section of the show. I'm here I decided to put on my Pride shirt, my Pride hat. I know it's kind of weird for summer for me to be wearing this, but I got my Pride mic. I'm now talking on, and you can see my colorful. And when it goes white, that's green. Just so we're putting it out there. But anyways, so this time we are reviewing.
Well, and keeping within the theme of our interview with Sven, and our interview with Sven.
Yes.
We're focusing on New Orleans for our review.
NOLA.
The new Queer as Folk.
So this one is an update of the Russell T Davies. I don't know if it's really an update. It's more of a 2.0.
Yeah, it has nothing to do with the original cast or the original story at all. Right. It's a whole new story.
Either original cast or original story, because there was a UK version,
and a Canada version, and it's neither of those. It's a whole new story, a whole new cast, in the vein of the same storytelling, in that it's an ensemble cast of queer characters, but they knocked it out of the park and got bigger. So the official write-up is, it centers on a group of club-going friends who find support in the gay community following a tragedy. And it's no surprise, I hope it's not a spoiler, the tragedy they're focusing on is a shooting in a gay bar. And right before episode 1 even starts, they have a a thing on the screen where they know that this is problematic for people, but this is part of the story they needed to tell. And I think this is why I like this version the most, is because it actually deals with people having an external real problem created the problems in their lives. They weren't just creating their own problems. And I think that's the thing I realized.
I think it's interesting because it's a flip of how the US version ended.
Right. That is true. But I think I've realized that's why I have a problem with most drama. Most dramatic series, the people are creating their own problems, and after a while that gets stale and boring and almost unbelievable, because you're like, that's not logical. Why did you do that? But in this series, the problem was created in their environment, but they didn't do it. And so the series focuses on how they heal and come together after it. And that's why I love it so much.
That and the fact that we finally have different able people as a focus in the story, and they're given full agency. This is how you do it. This is a masterclass in how you do it.
Yes.
And I sat there and when the scene for the Crip Rave was going to happen, I'm like, oh, okay, we're going to use that. We're going to reclaim that. Okay. Yep. Did not expect that. It was a kind of surprise. I get it. It's like gays are now reclaiming queer and starting to wear it on our sleeve, especially for us older generations where it was very majorly derogatory and used purgative against us. So what I like about this was that it reset several people, because even in queer spaces, our different abled people are not always given their due or given full agency or even acknowledged.
Right.
And so, and can I just take a pause and just say, Ryan O'Connell, that man has some of the most brilliant he's like the gay Bob Newhart. He's like the gay Bob Newhart. The looks he gives serves up so many undercurrents of what's going on in the scene. He's just brilliant. I mean, just his timing, the way he turns a phrase. I really love when I see him on, because I think, not only it doesn't make it feel like, he's definitely one of us. It's just, there is a slight whimsy to it. At the same time, it's very surgically pointed. It is ironic. It's everything all at once. So big shout out to Ryan. We love you, boy. It's just, he's great. I just could not be happier that he's in the middle of all this.
Right.
And I think it's interesting because it plays with family dynamics too.
Big time. Huge.
Yeah, because you have Ryan and, and his brother, the two brothers. Yeah, Brody. And you see how their relationship is somewhat complicated because of Brody's, for lack of a better example, he's the Brian of the US version of course, he's the party boy, non-committal, I am a little bugged that trope is in this one. I get that a lot of, queers do have people in their lives who are like that. But that's the only criticism I would give it, is that's, I think for me, is too forward, in that we have another Brian and Justin set up.
Yeah. I mean, he comes into right off the bat, he comes into the series having just dropped out of med school, and he's kind of finding himself. I think, though, was it episode 3 when he threw the party?
Yes.
Episode 3 or 4. He throws a party for the people who survived the nightclub shooting as a way to reclaim it, because it's being used by others for publicity. We'll stop there. So he decides to throw a party just for the sake of having a party for the people who lived it. And I think it's at that point.
And the people who passed, too. They were eulogized as well.
They were eulogized as well.
In the way that queers would do it.
Right, as opposed to a media glitz. But I think that's the turning point where he starts to commit to being part of a community.
I think in the beginning, it's a mixed thing. I think part of it is also his wanting to be still the center of attention and wanting something for himself. I don't think it's completely altruistic. I don't think it becomes altruistic until he's confronted at the party, and then he leaves and he rides the bike and he has that moment with the car.
Oh my God.
Yeah, and Dadius's parents, who are uber religious and had kicked him out, and they didn't even come to claim his body when he didn't survive the shooting. So I think that when he falls on the bike just behind the car, and he sees the car and he sees the sticker that is half written, pulled off, that commemorates the tragedy, the disaster, that I think that's when he steps over that line and says, fuck it. And I think his motivations become more altruistic there. And then when he has the situation in the following episode, in episode 4, where he is trying to be everything to everyone. Yeah. And he fails miserably at it. And I think it's interesting because that's when Mingus, the young 17-year-old, kind of gets away with playing that age.
Right. Right.
I think Randy Harrison did a much better job of playing a high schooler than this kid does. But anyways, be that as it may, that's why I say we have that whole Brian Justin thing happening. And I'm just like, really? I mean, could we have done something else there? Maybe an older person that Brody meets up with who maybe gets more of an education of this is how you do it.
Right.
Kind of thing. And, I don't know. That's the only part that bugs me. It's like we're retreading ground we've already trod. So that's my only major complaint about it. I wish that dynamic was something different. Because you have, Mingus literally full on in the same Justin mode. Right. Young kid wants to be involved, wants to get in there with the gays, with his people, with his tribe. And then shit, so that part of it, I was just like,
right.
Could we have done something else?
But if you're looking for a series, I cannot recommend something more. It's so diverse too. The skin tones alone are just beautiful to look at.
And the spectrum of queerdom.
And the spectrum of queerdom was the other side that I was getting to. Because we've got everything trans character. We've got a trans character trying to be a mom. Thank you. Yep. That's beautiful. Everything, club kids, the guys who don't care about the club. I mean, a drag queen who is playing herself, a local legend playing herself.
We're right there with Lady Chablis.
Yep, thank you, Laveau. See it, watch it, and I feel like this is sort of the spread of diversity that television needs to aspire to.
And bravo to Peacock for stepping up.
Yes.
Because realistically, this is NBC.
Yeah. Yep.
So, and they go there. They go there.
They do.
You have different able people having sexual situations. Mm-hmm. They go there. And it's not done as a fetish. They don't fetishize them. They give them their due and they give them their respect. And that's the thing I did love about what the 4 episodes I've seen so far.
The very opening scene is a fetishization of...
Yes, you see that. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But the black man realizes it, turns and walks out. It's beautiful. I loved it.
Yes. And that, I think, is a... it's just, there are wonderful things they're doing that I go, yes. This is in line with how Pose was going. This is how you do it. The downside of it is... it's problematic in just how some of the relationship situations are set up. It's stuff we've already tried. And I wish they had thought of something else, I do like Juliette Lewis playing the mom.
Yes.
What is her name? Charlotte? Or no?
Judy.
There we go. Friends of Judy. Anyways, I do, and I love Kim Cattrall.
And my husband cheered when Kim Cattrall stepped into the frame as the mother of her 2 adopted sons, both gay. Yeah.
It's nice to see her shine again and do something that the gays, her people. Mm-hmm. She's right up there with Jennifer. Can I think of her last name? She was in the Christmas movie we watched.
Coolidge,
yeah, thank you. Sidebar. Jennifer Coolidge, they're right up there with Jennifer Coolidge, so, we've got our divas, we've got our ally divas that, have got a status in queerdom. And, she's right up there with them. And, it's nice to see her get a position where she can do what she does best, which is great character acting.
Yep.
And I just love that she's so, I don't want to say oblivious because it's not obliviousness to her situation. She's oblivious or isn't caring. Doesn't give no fucks about other people's opinions of what's going on. She's like, oh, kids, come on.
Right.
And she does it with a martini glass.
Often and regularly.
Yeah, exactly.
Or a glass of breast milk. And I'm going to leave that comment alone.
Yeah, a glass of breast milk. That was a new one on me.
I know. Like, I didn't see that one coming out. I'm like, what?
Okay. I don't see that going big in the bars.
No. So, you want to give you
Can you
ratings?
imagine? Wait, okay, just before, can you imagine the little Twinkie boys when they serve something like that at the bars? They're like, whoa, this is so good. What is it? Well,
No. Although I would like to see it, but
you have a lot of Minguses doing this.
Mm-hmm.
Anyways, all right, let's get to the ratings.
Mhm.
All right, so I'm gonna start, and I'm gonna say that overall it's a 5.
Yeah.
I think that screenplay, I'm gonna give it a 4, because of the aforementioned retrotting of ground that we've already covered with the other Queer as Folk. And I want to give a shout out and say, if people haven't watched that version, they should go check them out, because the UK version, which is where it started, and the US version are different. They are vastly different shows. They have the same named characters, but different things happen to them. So check out both series if you get a chance to do that. Sound lighting score, I gave it a 5 because they just are on point with everything. Art direction, again, a 5. Even the when they go into Noah's apartment, you obviously move from outside location shot to internal studio. It flows seamlessly. They picked a building that you can say, oh yeah, okay, I can see how that could be inside this. So, and they still capture all the ambiance of NOLA, what NOLA's known for. And they do a lot of location shots, so you don't have Vancouver subbing for New Orleans, So, they're true to that, which is great. So it's another case of we get to see another city with queer representation. They do it very well. So 5 on the art direction. Cast 5. I would give them a 6 or a 10 or 147. They knock it out of the park. It's wonderful to see our people telling our stories. And I get that everybody is an actor. I've been on the boards myself. I know how it works, but there is something magical when we tell our own stories. Here's the way I feel about it. Yes, any cis straight actor could play these roles, but I know they're acting, and that's a disconnect for me. Right. When I know that person is queer in real life playing it, I know those people, whether they are like that themselves, they have people in their lives who are like that. And it gives a sense of connectivity to our queer tribe. We have that connection. We know that they are coming from a place of knowledge, of personal knowledge, of personal love within their community, their found family, their friends, that kind of thing. So I just, that's why I say it's more magical when queer people tell their own stories. They are just much better, I think. And that's all I'm going to say about it. I get the whole, they're an actor, yes, anybody can play. But I think when we do our own stories, they're much more magical. So that's what I'll say about the cast. Directing, I'm going to say 4.5. I can't point to any one thing that directing wise seemed, I will say, and I don't know if it was the DP or if it was actually the director themselves, but some of the coloring bothered me, like when they had the rave party at No House, the oversaturation of reds where it was like literally posterizing people. I'm like, really? We're going to go that far? It seemed a bit much. I would have liked to have that balance more because the blotchy, oversaturated colors was almost distracting. So that's why I'm going to give it a 4.5. Queer themes, 5. So my personal overall, 4.75.
Nice. Mine, almost all 5s. So production quality 5. I gave screenplay a 5 because some of this, although I know it feels like a retread of the older stuff, also a lot of it feels very new. Like the trans mom who's a school teacher. Who, by the way, she also just guest starred in a Star Trek Strange New Worlds episode.
Oh, yes, that's right. Yep.
Sunlighting score, that was my 4.5. And like you, similar reason, there were some moments where it got blotchy, but I will say this, compared to my review of Fire Island, even in the dark club scenes, you could tell who everybody was and see what they were doing without it being overly bright and flashy. So I felt they handled club lighting better than Fire Island.
Right. And where that's born from, just so people know, it's not lit like we are now.
No.
Nightclubs are not like that. Come on, people.
No.
We all know that, And I think that sometimes DPs just get freaked out if they have to do a club scene. Mm-hmm. Where's my lights?
Right.
Kind of thing. So, yeah.
But yes, everything else I gave 5s. Art direction, costuming, I gave it a 5. And watch it for the drag costumes, some of which come out of dumpsters and become magnificent.
Mm-hmm.
But casting, like you, 5. This cast was phenomenal. I would watch them look at wallpaper. Directing, I did give it a 5, and only because, like I said, it's drama done in a way that I like. And I like the way the director is pushing them and pushing them and pushing them. Queer themes presented, 5. It covers the whole gamut of queer ideas, and I hope to see a couple more dropped in. I would love to see a demisexual or asexual character pop up.
Yes, please. Please. That's one part of the spectrum I would love to see. Yes, exactly. Amen.
So got my fingers crossed because I still have a couple episodes to go. But personal overall rating, I did give it a 5.
Excellent. Well, there you have it, kids. That's our review of the new reboot of Queer as Folk.
And it is streaming on Peacock, so please go watch it and send a message that this is the kind of stuff we want to see, because you know what?
Exactly.
Your streaming time is tracked.
Right. Exactly. Absolutely. And so we'll have something new, still carrying on our Pride theme. And we're probably going to carry Pride through the entire Pride season, not just the month of June, because there are several things that get promoted during the summer months of Pride, the full Pride season, which often goes into August and early September. So we will be covering some other things that are queer-centric to the community over the next several weeks. So just keep an eye out for that. Until then, keep watching those movies, keep making those memories with friends and found family and your real family. And we will catch you again next week with the next one. Moving on. So, what are we on about this week? Vance, why don't you tell us what you're on about?
Having just come back to the world after being away for my parents' 50th wedding anniversary, I have kind of been out of touch, but my Twitter feed provided me something that made me actually jump for joy in my kitchen. From Joe Biden. This week, I signed an executive order that directs key federal agencies to protect LGBTQ plus communities from hateful attacks, use the full force of the federal government to prevent inhumane practices of conversion therapy, and advance equality for families. That's the president we need, folks.
Yes. That's government at work. That's how you do it.
Yep. So that's what I'm on about, though that's not my Who Won the Week. What about you?
I want to say that I'm on about, there are a number of Russian, and we've covered this before on our show. There's a number of Russian YouTubers that I'm following, and I think it's very interesting that many of them are starting to get much more serious about the implications of what is going on. And you definitely have this dichotomy of the older generation who pretty much watch state TV, pretty much toe the line of the propaganda machine that Russia has. And then you have the youth who VPN and you can get around the blocked sites. So they see much more and they understand the full breadth of what's going on. So it's interesting to see this dichotomy going on. And the thing that really surprises me the most, I've been watching, and I gave the wrong name when we did it back before, and I even flew a correction as I was saying it wrong. It's 1420 is the name of the channel. This is the channel where this young film student goes out into different parts of different cities. He's now gone across. He's even been way out in the eastern part of Russia, which is where they can wave and say hi to Sarah Palin. So he goes to these different rural areas, and he even interviews people there to get their opinions. So you're starting to see a much broader range of Russians reacting to, but basically he's the man in the street. He walks up and poses a very poignant and timely question and has different Russians respond to it. And what I've been surprised by is that several of the older generation are not as zombified, which is what the Russians say when you're caught up in the Russian propaganda, not so zombified. It's really quite amazing to see some of these older babushkas and some of these older men who actually know what's going on. And they know what their government is saying and not saying and why. And I think that has been the biggest surprise for me, is to see that this kid has found a way to lift the rock and find the people who are of the older generation, the Soviet era. And they know how to look at this through what lens to look through it. So I'm on about that this week because it's nice to see that it's not just the youth who are very, very internet centric, but you've got a number of older people, and it's a fair chunk. I would say it's almost half and half. A number of older people who have a better view of what's really going on. And that gives me hope.
Nice. That
at some point, something can happen in Russia. Now, the latest outlooks, I follow Peter Zeihan. If people don't know who he is, he's a world-renowned geopoliticist, and I think he has the best grasp of what's going on worldly as far as all the locations around the world. But he makes a very valid point that we don't think Russia's going to change regimes anytime soon unless Putin drops dead, which I've never wished for somebody to be dead before, but this one I will definitely put down because this man is just pure evil. But I will say that, and just a small sidebar for everybody. We're in our Who Won the Week. We have something else to go on about. But we will have a new T-shirt going up that actually is a T-shirt, and I'll fly it here, of a President Zelensky in a superhero outfit with Ukrainian colors, and it has the Ukrainian thing in it. And I have pictures of Putin and Lukashenko and Xi in cartoon form around him, and the caption will read, as it says here, "In a world of Putin's, Lukashenko's, and Xi's, be a Zelensky."
Nice.
So we're going to have some really interesting new swag coming up, which brings us to our next What Are We On About? And this is a joint one between Vance and I. We have relaunched the store. We are now actually producing it through a print-on-demand company that has high ratings. The nice part about it is they are global. So all of their printing and distribution centers are around the world. They have 37 places that they're placed around the world.
Right.
So when you order something, you don't have to wait weeks and weeks and weeks to get it. They have one here in the United States. You'll get it within 5 days, and sometimes even sooner than that. So we found them. We think they're really sidebar. We found them. We think they're really amazing. So we are rebranding and relaunching the store. That is also what we're on about this week. So please go check that out. We will have a little ad kind of blurb about it. And then we want you to check them out. It helps us. It helps us keep the show running, keep the light on, keep guests coming in the door, especially in this time when our voices are really important to be heard. Children, come forward. This is your time to pick up the baton. Our generation started, because you need to be vigilant. We know what's coming down the pipe. You all need to just pay attention. Have your party time, have your good times, have your fun times with your friends and family. That's great. Pay attention. Pay attention. Yeah. We know when the word grooming starts appearing. Pay attention. Be vigilant. So,
well, that's very true. You didn't even take a breath, and I wanted to say something. I know we constantly ask for your help to keep the show going. That is because in our 7.5, almost 8 years now, we have never asked our guests to pay for their time on the air. We interview them because we love them, because we love the work they're putting out, and we think it's important. So
Excellent.
They're not paying to be here.
So this is a labor of love for Vance and I. So whatever we can get to support us would be great. Make sure to subscribe to the show. That also helps us. We're trying to push towards getting monetized, which means we have to get past 1,000 subscribers. So, sign up. It doesn't do anything. It doesn't cost you anything. Push that little subscribe button. It does do something.
It doesn't hurt anything.
Yes, exactly. There's no carbon footprint that we know of. Anyways, so that's what we're on about this week. So who won the week? Who won the week for you?
Well, so now to your warning about youth being aware and alert and paying attention, the students at Seattle Pacific University handed their interim president rainbow pride flags during their commencement ceremony. Why? Why did they do this instead of shaking his hand? Because there's still a school policy in Seattle, Washington, barring the hiring of LGBTQ plus people. And the students wanted to make a statement, and so they did. Now, I know it's a private university. It's not a state university, so their hiring policies aren't as regulated. But come on, it's 2022.
Yes. Unfortunately, we've got that old tropes that were present in the 60s and 70s that when the gay liberation movement first started, that's what we were fighting against. And they're trying to bring that playbook out, dust it off, and use it again. And we've just got to put a stop to it. We have to say, no, bitch, we played this record. We done broke it.
Well, and thanks to the students who stood up against it.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Now, the other thing that who won the week is our very own dear Vance Bastian. But we are not permitted to talk about what is so fabulous, at least not yet. So stay tuned. That's all I will tell you. You may have to wait quite a bit for this because it's something that won't really fully have fruition till the end of the year. But we will come back to it. We promise we will come back to it and we will tell you. But it is a wonderful win for our very own dear Vance Bastian. So he won the week for me. I think it's fabulous. I am really, really happy. I'm so proud of some of the things that he's going to be able to do. So just know that it has a tie to the show in a very, very unusual way. Well, not unusual.
It's a pretty direct tie.
Yeah, it's a pretty direct tie. But, it's when you guys get to find out what it is, you will be just as thrilled as we are.
And just to set some expectations, we won't be able to talk about it till the holiday time. And I wanted to wait, but Baz is beaming. And so I said, okay.
Yeah. So that's all we can tell you. But just know it is very worthwhile. So, it was wonderful, wonderful news. So we're bursting at the seams, but we're going to have to sew those seams up so that they don't burst any further because we don't want to get him into trouble. So that's it for the show. Please, remember to subscribe, tell your friends, do what we can. Go check out the new store. It's on our website. Just go over to support and store, and you will then get put into our gelato store through Shopify. So everything's secure. You can do your purchases, and it's all done securely through Shopify storefront. So there you be.
All right, everyone. Thank you. Please like and subscribe. You want to get alerts for new episodes so you can tune in next week for your queer media fix. Happy Pride season.
Happy Pride. Bye.
Bye.
What's that? Closing time. The bums rush in melody, dear.